Hi, welcome to my next video. This time I wanted to show you how I made this illustration, which is one of the pictures that I did for the articles that I wrote for the Shumi no Bungu Bako magazine, which is a Japanese magazine about writing and drawing instruments, and mostly writing instruments like fountain pens, glass pens, inks, and so on. I was really lucky to be able to feature my articles in 4 of their editions, where I try to describe some of my adventures that I have with writing instruments when I find an interesting tool like waterproof inks, or I try to do something interesting with old things like fixing a broken fountain pen and trying to do a picture with it, and so on. So in each episode I try to present not only some interesting pictures and a review of a writing instrument, but also a story about how I got to using it and why it's nice and what's interesting about it, and some backstory also about my art activity and the thoughts behind my art also. So usually for each article I would need the main piece, which demos the use of the tool that I'm referring to or reviewing or just showing, but also I would need few other pictures that are just like panels from a comic, because I made these articles to be read as a half comic, half reading thing. So there is a story in the article that you follow from the beginning through some comic-like panels and text, and also illustrations that explain technical things about the pen, for example, that I'm showcasing. So far on my YouTube channel I showed you some of the big illustrations that I did to showcase the tool, but I have not included any of the smaller comic panel-like illustrations, and this is one of them. So I wanted to show you how I made these, explain a bit about what this drawing is about and about the story making behind it. Okay, so let me explain a bit first about the tools that I'm using here, about my method of doing this illustration. So first I did a sketch in my sketchbook, few sketches actually, and when I had a sketch that I liked and the content looked more or less okay, I then just made a photo of it and tried to fix it up a bit in Procreate, so then I can trace it using the tracing table. So I just made the lines cleaner and defined everything as I would like it to look on the final picture, so I don't have to think about where to put all the lines when I'm doing them with the fountain pen, because I don't want to use any correction tool here. I can't, because I will color this later with watercolors in the next step, so I have to do all the lines almost perfectly. Of course I will later scan this picture and I can fix any small mistakes that I'll do on the computer, but if I can, I wanted to make this picture as close as possible to the final form while doing everything just with pen and watercolors by hand. So I do the sketch, I fix the sketch up with Procreate a bit, I print it later, I use the tracing table to trace it with my fountain pen with a waterproof ink. I'm using here the IndiGraph Fountain pen because I'm using the carbon ink here, so the ink that's waterproof and it's not very good to leave for a longer time in a regular fountain pen. And because I was doing these quarterly, like 4 times a year, I would not use this pen for a month or something, so I did not feel comfortable to leave this ink in a different fountain pen, so I'm using this in the IndiGraph, and it's okay for doing a picture like this either way, so just the right tool for the right job, I think. And when the ink was dry and when all the lines were complete, I just colored this illustration with Mijello Mission Gold watercolors using the Escoda Perla brushes, because they are nice and sharp. These pictures are not so big even in the form that I'm painting them in, because they are painted only like 120% bigger than the final illustration in the magazine. I don't want to paint them bigger because later in the magazine, when they are just squished too much on the page, all the details are really squished together and compressed, and the lines also become really thin. So I tend to paint these almost in the size that they will be later printed in the magazine. So that's the process. But about the contents of this the story this time was about me having just some fun, trying to find some interesting things to draw and paint, going around the city, taking photos of just buildings and things that I found that were just a bit different, just a bit interesting. So like this telephone, like public phone that was just put on a mailbox outside of a store. You don't see public telephones so much in Tokyo, especially ones that are just a part of a store or just outside of a store like this. You can still find some telephone booths, but just a public phone like this, like we would see in a picture from, I don't know, 1990s to 1980s, that is quite rare. So I was fascinated by this phone and took some photos. So this scene of me taking photos of this retro phone is just the start panel of the story. But of course, in real life, there was no shop person that was looking at me and what I was doing. Just I added him for a comic kind of relief reason. So I wanted to make a story even in this one small panel. So there's me taking the photo of the phone, and there's the shop attendant, the owner of the shop, just looking at me and going like, what is he doing? And I wanted this to be kind of sequential. So in Japan, you of course read a panel from right to left. So I put the shop person on the right, and I put then the phone, and then me, and then my thoughts. So it goes in a sequence like, what is this person doing? And there's a phone, like a cute phone, and there's me taking a photo and thinking, oh, this is a cute phone standing on a mailbox. So this is just a one panel, one illustration, but it already introduces you to this story, which continues within the text of the article. And in the end, the story was about the paraphernalia Neri ballpoint pen, so drawing a picture with watercolors and a ballpoint pen. And I already presented you the picture that I used as a demo piece in this article. It was the one with the small shrine and the crow and the guy sweeping the floor. So this was actually a part of the last article that I did in this series of 4 articles. Some of them were really involved because they were like 4 pages bigger than A4. So I had to do a lot of text and a lot of illustrations to fill them up. But I really like this experience. It allowed me to practice a bit my storytelling, even though this is not a storytelling magazine. This is not a magazine with stories. It's more technical and more about the things and the prices and the details and like maintenance details and so on, and where to buy them and shops and so on. But I wanted to make a series of articles that were really story oriented. So making the text and the images and then following on the interplay between them and making a bit like a comic thing for 4 issues was really interesting and exciting. And I think I learned a lot, especially about drawing characters that are actually doing something in these illustrations. There is a story behind how they are portrayed. They are active, which is good for me because I don't feel comfortable in doing characters yet. So I often default to passive characters that are just elements of the background. Okay, so this is how the picture turned out. I like the colors, I like the dynamism of the scene. I think there are a lot of things that you can look at in just the one picture, which is great. And I think I learned a lot doing these shots for the whole 4 stories featured in the magazine. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. As always, feel free to comment, share and subscribe, and you can also support me on Patreon. It's your support there that allows me to spend time making these videos. Okay, see you in the next one. Bye!